Oh, that's the best I've done in a long time. So with that, hey, we're going to be reading from 100 Ways to Motivate Yourself. I got Cindy on the call. I'm so excited to be reading this book. So without further ado, Cindy, are you there?
I am here. I just love getting my Monday morning started with you trying to figure out your buttons to push. All right. This is chapter 1, and it kind of doesn't say chapters, but it does have a 100 things in here, so I guess they're chapters. But anyway, this is titled 100 Ways to Motivate Yourself, Change Your Life Forever by Steve Chandler. And the first chapter is Get on Your Deathbed. Interesting topic. He said a number of years ago when I was working with psychotherapist Devers Brandon, she put me through her deathbed exercise. He says, I was asked to clearly imagine myself lying on my own deathbed and to fully realize the feelings connected with dying and saying goodbye. Then she asked me to mentally invite the people in my life who were important to me to visit my bedside one at a time. As I visualized each friend and relative coming in to visit me, I had to speak to them out loud. I had to say to them what I wanted them to know as I was dying. This is deep. As I spoke to each person, I could feel my voice breaking. Somehow I couldn't help breaking down. My eyes were filled with tears. I experienced such a sense of loss. It was not my own life I was mourning. It was the love I was losing. To be more exact, it was a communication of love that had never been there. During this difficult exercise, I really got to see how much I'd left out of my life. How many wonderful feelings I had about my children, for example, that I'd never explicitly expressed. At the end of the exercise, I was an emotional mess. I had rarely cried that hard in my life, but when those emotions cleared, a wonderful thing happened. I was clear. I knew what was really important and who really mattered to me. I understood for the first time what George Patton meant when he said death can be more exciting than life. From that day on, I vowed not to leave anything to chance. I made up my mind never to leave anything unsaid. I wanted to live as if I might die any moment. The entire experience altered the way I've related to people ever since. And the great point of the exercise wasn't lost on me. We don't have to wait until we're actually near death to receive these benefits of being mortal. We can create the experience anytime we want. A few years later, when my mother lay dying in the hospital in Tucson, I rushed to her side to hold her hand and repeat to her all the love and gratitude I felt for who she had been for me. When she finally died, my grieving was very intense but very short. In a matter of days, I felt that everything great about my mom had entered into me and would live there as a loving spirit forever. A year and a half before my father's death, I began to send him letters and poems about his contribution to my life. He lived his last months and died in the grip of chronic illness, so communicating and getting through to him in person wasn't always easy. But I always felt good that he had those letters and poems to read. Once he called me after I'd sent him a Father's Day poem, and he said, "Hey, I guess I wasn't such a bad father after all." Poet William Blank warned us about keeping our thoughts locked up until we die. Quote, "When thought is closed in caves," he wrote, "then love will show its roots in deepest hell." Pretending you aren't going to die is detrimental to your enjoyment of life. It is detrimental in the same way that it would be detrimental for a basketball player to pretend there was no end to the game he was playing. That player would reduce his intensity, adopt a lazy playing style, and, of course, end up not having any fun at all. Without an end, there is no game. Without being conscious of death, you can't fully be aware of the gift of life. Yet many of us, including myself, keep pretending that our life's game will have no end. We keep planning to do great things someday when we feel like it. We assign our goals and dreams to that imaginary island in the sea that Dennis Waitley calls Someday Isle. We find ourselves saying, someday I'll do this, and someday I'll do that. Confronting our own death doesn't have to wait until we run out of life. In fact, being able to vividly imagine our last hours on our deathbed creates a paradoxical sensation, the feeling of being born all over again, the first step to fearless self-motivation. People Living Deeply wrote poet Anais Nin, I don't know how to pronounce that, have no fear of death. And as Bob Dylan has sung, he who is not busy being born is busy dying. That is a very deep first chapter, and it's certainly got me thinking a lot. And I'll give it to you, Tracy, for your feedback.
Well, just two things came to mind, and I'm tearing up. So my mom passed, not long ago, a couple years ago, and I remember thinking, I wish I'd hugged her just a couple more times or told her I loved her just a couple more times. And so I think that's natural, really, so we never love our loved ones enough. And number two, I remember, I was always on that aisle, that someday aisle. And so I remember, I guess it was you that did this chapter, and I remember reading this chapter, and that really helped me achieve some goals because I took this to heart. I heard another author one time do this deathbed thing, and he said no one ever regrets the things that they tried and failed at. They only regret the things that they didn't try. And so I also took that to heart, that there's nothing wrong with trying something, and if you fail at it, hey, whatever. You're not going to regret those things. It's just the things that you were fearful to try. Yeah, this is such a powerful, powerful chapter, and if we live by that, by this chapter, how much fuller would our lives be? So with that, I'll give it back to you.
I think it says, there's so much in here that to me says, be grateful for what you have in the moment and, not be living to the so many people. And I know I did this when I was younger. When I get this, when I do this, I'm going to be happy. When I get to this level, when I get to this point, when I get this kind of house, when I get, it's always a someday, someday, someday. And the bottom line is that someday may never come because you don't know, if your tomorrow is promised. And that's the getting into the deep part. We've experienced, our daughter was pregnant, and she just lost the baby Friday. And so it's like having to walk her through death and not being there with her. And she was only 10 weeks pregnant, but still she had about 6 weeks to, become in love with this child growing in her. And so it was experiencing death for her. And, just having to remind her of what she has and to go hug the two healthy, beautiful children that God gave her, and to remind her that she has so much to be grateful for and that she has so much to live for, and that this was, just something that we don't know why. We don't know why it happened, but it happened, and we have to move on from it. So, living in the past and living with regrets is not good, and you don't want to be sitting on your deathbed going, gosh, I wish. My dad died about a year ago, and, I thought, why didn't I spend more time with him? And so now, I spend more time with my mom now and always tell her I love her before I walk out that door, give her a hug, because I didn't always do that. And so I think that we all just can learn from this, that let's just live in the moment, be grateful, and, enjoy what we have. So I'll give it to you, Tracy, to close out.
Hey, so I have a challenge for everybody this week. Just if you're resentful at someone in the past, or, if there's a little bit of, I don't know, if there's something that has gotten in the way of a relationship and you feel like you were wrong, just put that to the side and call them and make amends this week. Whether you were in the wrong or you feel like they were in the wrong, what matters really? Just call up, put your pride to the side, and I'm really talking to myself. I'm going to do that. Just do that with one person this week. I'm challenging you to do that. And also, if there's one thing you haven't tried that you're going to do one day, if you're on that one-day island, start it this week. And so with that, I'm going to go ahead and unmute. Unmute.
High is 83 to 88. Northwest and around 5 miles per hour in the morning.
All right, everybody, you have a great week.
15 miles per hour in the afternoon. Tonight, clear.
And stay safe.
The news is on. Happy Monday, everyone.
Good job.